Welcome to the Amazing Truth Podcast, a podcast where we focus on real issues and have real talk, and as always, provide a biblical perspective. We hope that you will be blessed as you listen.
Hello and welcome to the Amazing Truth Podcast. This is the Amazing Truth Minute.
This is the Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Stitcher. Like us on Facebook at the Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Real issues, real talk.
For the Amazing Truth Minute, today we'll focus on Revelation 22, verse 17. And it reads, "Let him who thirsts come. Whoever desires, let him take the water of life freely." See, when Jesus spoke to the woman at the well, he offered her living water and promised that those who drink of it would never thirst again. That's John 4:10 of verse 14. The metaphor of Christ as living water is one that appears in numerous places in Scripture. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters. On you who have no money, come buy and eat." Isaiah 51 verse 1. Again, in the book of Revelation, an invitation is offered to those who are thirsty. Living water is an appropriate metaphor for the person and work of Jesus Christ because it represents a universal need. Without water, our physical bodies perish. In the same way, without Jesus, we are spiritually dead. But Jesus does not leave us to perish. Instead, he invites those who are thirsty to drink freely from the fountain of life. And he promises that those who do will never thirst again, but will experience eternal life. And that is the Amazing Truth Minute.
This is the Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Stitcher. Like us on Facebook at the Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Real issues, real talk.
All right, welcome back.
Mr. Ezra.
Hi, I didn't miss you. I don't want to lie.
And yet you're here week after week.
The reason I come is because of the guests
The
that
guests,
come.
that's
For
true.
you,
Yeah.
it's good to be back, Kenan.
Good to be back, Ezra. Good to be back.
How is your team doing in World Cup so far?
Oh yeah, my team Portugal is I switched, man.
You switched?
I
Yes.
switched. I know I was angry at Ronaldo, but I say, you know what, I gotta move on. So
Okay.
my team Portugal won their first game, so I'm still hanging in there.
You're still hanging in
Yeah.
there.
How's your team doing?
My team is playing tomorrow. We will revenge the first loss that we had. But anyways, it's good to be back, Kenan.
How was your Thanksgiving, Ezra?
My Thanksgiving was a blessing, man. I was thankful. I'm thankful.
Amen.
Thankful.
That's
I
good.
didn't have turkey, but I was good.
No, I did. Yeah, I
And
had
you?
chicken.
You had chicken.
I had chicken.
I know.
It was good.
I know you struggle with.
I don't struggle. Ezra. Please don't put words in my mouth.
Well, you see, already we started on a high note. I always say this, Ken, and the one thing I miss about the audio podcast is that we had the chance to reveal the guest.
Yeah.
With the video element, everybody has already seen
Who
the
the guest
guest
is, yeah.
But today we are delighted, we're excited. I'm using big words.
I see, Ezra. You've
Try to delighted to have our brother. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to take that thunder away from him. But I'm gonna ask a question as we segment for him to introduce himself. Right.
Right.
When is the first time that you actually earned your first money?
Me?
Yeah.
The
Not the one that you stole. As kids we stole.
Hey, you're right. When you talk about earning, that was the right way.
The right way.
The right way. I worked at a local company here. When I just came to the States, I was arranging mail in a warehouse. So that was my first job, and that was the first time I ever worked.
How did you feel with that paycheck?
It was little, but it was much.
It was
to
much.
me. What I did with it, I do not know. But it was. What was your first?
My
pay?
first paycheck, I worked at White Castle. Shout out to you guys if you're still in business. I haven't been back there for a while. But yeah, White Castle, and I felt like I was the richest man on earth.
I know, man.
Like
I
I
know
thought
that
all my
feeling.
problems were gone.
I know that feeling.
But here we are still trying to make money. And that is why the guest today is important, man.
You know, is that when you start talking about money,
Money.
it's either people think, money, you're gonna make money. But once you make the money, that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's why we have our guest here today.
That's why we have a guest. We're gonna let him introduce himself, tell us his name, and tell us something about yourself. Why you're passionate about this topic on money.
Yeah. So my name is Troy Levy. Firstly, let me just thank both of you, gentlemen. I'm really excited to be here. Anytime I'm talking about money, I don't know, it's like my juices start flowing. I'm excited. This is great, and I'm just really excited for our audience to be able to not just listen to what I have to say, but just to have an ongoing conversation surrounding money. For me, what was the question? How did I grow up?
So the question is, why are you passionate about this topic?
Why? Yes, that's right. All right, so my passion for it really started back in 2011. It started to grow exponentially around 2015, and this year has been like a really, really special year. So let me start with 2011. I read a really, really important book. One of the best, I would say one of the best money books in general that people should probably read, and that's The Total Money Makeover by the great financial literacy guru Dave Ramsey. I'm sure most people have probably heard of Dave Ramsey. Well, when I read that book, it changed my life, right? And from there, I paid off one credit card. I think I had like $1,000 balance that was just kind of carrying over from month to month. Who knows why? But from there, got out of credit card debt, but still wasn't serious about getting on a serious plan. And by the way, Dave Ramsey has a plan, pretty good plan, but still wasn't serious about getting on a plan. So we were still, financing a lot of things, still getting into a lot of debt, not saving nearly as much as we wanted to, until a very embarrassing moment happened. And maybe you guys can ask me about that.
We're gonna get to that later. We're gonna get to that.
Yeah, but let me just fast forward to 2015 when I started offering this financial literacy course, and it wasn't my own, but started offering this at my church as sort of a service for our community. So this wasn't just for church members, but this is for any and everybody who wanted to attend. And we had several people that weren't part of our church that were part of this financial literacy community class. And from there, I'm like, man, this is really exciting. Like, in my profession, there are very few things that excite me. There are some things that are just necessary that I have to do, and most things are just kind of drab. Like I have to do it week to week, and it's like, all right, here we go again. But this, I started noticing, man, I'm actually really excited about doing this. And so it turned into, I did my dissertation on financial literacy, and what it has to do with faith as well as race. So I studied, we can get into that a little bit later also, what exactly my dissertation was on. But man, and I'm like, okay, there's a gap, there's a niche here that there's an itch for people of color, people that look like you and I, that isn't being filled, because there are some unique things that we deal with, right? That financial literacy curricula don't necessarily target or point to. So from there, I started forming my own financial literacy curriculum. And this year, kind of fast forwarding, is a huge year where I've finally finished that, and we can get into that a little bit later. But yeah, that's how I got into this, man. And it's an ongoing passion where I love to talk about it. Any chance I get to talk about it, I'm super excited.
The passion.
Ezra, when I talk about mental health, and I'm passionate about it.
Yes.
Man, when it comes to money, that's why I fold. But looking at Troy, I mean, in my, at least in my culture where I grew up, it was one of those unspeakable things that you really want to speak out, but you don't want to speak out. Much of it because you're probably didn't afford lots of things. So even talking about
is
money,
it that we didn't afford, or how it was framed?
Exactly, how it was framed, or even the planning that our parents did. Maybe they didn't.
Was there a plan?
Exactly, and that's why it was hard to talk about it because there was really no plan. You say there was money, and our parents used to say, "I don't have money," all the time.
I never had
All the
my
time.
father say,
I have money.
Yeah.
Like, every single time it's like, I don't have money.
Was it a scare, a tactic? So
I
that,
don't know.
I know that, but that's I'm saying that because that's what at least I grew up and say, I don't have money. So then when you're growing up, is that it kind of builds into your
mindset.
culture and that keeps that mindset. So
Yeah, that I think a lot of homes, and I've never been grew up in a family besides a black family, so that's all I know.
Yeah.
But a lot of black families, people that I talk to who have shared common experiences, it's the same exact thing. And in the research that I have, literally these are resource questions that I asked people as they filled out these surveys, and these are the answers that we're getting. We didn't, in general, talk about money growing up,
Right.
or if we did talk about it, it was I don't have it, so don't ask. That was the extent of the conversation. So there's just a generation of us, I believe, that's coming up that we're not satisfied with those answers, but we still don't know how to get from point A to point B, where we
Right.
want to be. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So
Yes.
we're in the process of discovery right now.
You know, I'm so excited, man. Listeners, viewers, let me tell you something. We are talking money and maybe uncomfortable. You are tempted to turn off and leave. But let me tell you, the hook. I'm going to give you the hook, then we're going to go back. Troy, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
How much did you owe a few years ago in debt?
My wife and I did the math. We discovered that I'm going to give you a round number. You're probably not going to believe me because it's just so round of a number. Literally, almost just about exactly $100,000. It was like $99,000 and like $980. But I just rounded up to $100,000. That's how much we had borrowed between the both of us. Now that included student loans, car notes, store cards from Old Navy or Macy's or wherever. Everything that we had borrowed up to that point, it was literally $100,000.
And you said what a year ago? Oh
No. This was we had stopped borrowing by I think 2015. 2015 is the last time we borrowed.
And they worked themselves out and paid all that money.
That's right.
Stay tuned because we're going to build the story now from that. So, who's Troy? Were you born with these,
Of course, he wasn't born with a debt. Now we are sure.
we know that for sure. But tell me about your growing up, bringing family, size of family, where you're born and things like that.
Yeah, I come from a very loving home. Two parents in my home, my mom and my stepfather, and I only say stepfather just for our listeners to understand just the genetic relationship, but very much the man who raised me is my father. And my biological father loves me very much also, and so I have three sets of families, and everyone loved me very well. I just a great home to grow up in. I would have never had it any different. When particularly
Any siblings?
No siblings. Okay. Yeah, so I'm the only
only
child.
child.
Yeah, I am the only child, which ironically my wife, we've been married for 13 years, but she's one of 9. She has 8 siblings. So when we got married, this is a huge culture shock, man. Very huge shock. But yeah, only child. I grew up more or less on the East Coast, between New York. I was born in New York, moved to Maryland. Only time I didn't live on the East Coast, spent about 2 years in Michigan when my pop went to grad school, and then right back to the East Coast, man. So East Coast is home for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So born and raised in East Coast, only child, went to school in East Coast.
Yeah.
How was growing up in the home? We're talking about finance in this context for you. What was it like?
Yeah, so similar stories. We didn't grow up poor in general. There were some moments where, and my parents would probably laugh at this because I know that they know it's true, that we didn't have a lot. So I guess yes, we were poor to whatever extent for a couple of years growing up. But in general, we were middle class. My parents didn't make a ton of money ever necessarily, but we were middle class in general. With in similar answers where a lot of times it was, hey, we don't have it, but I did still grow up with some great experiences. I grew up going to private school, praise God. never had any need for anything. I had plenty of wants. Of
Yeah.
course, every kid has wants,
Yeah.
Right.
but never had need for anything.
Yeah.
So I was just tremendously blessed in that regard. But money, as I think over it, looking back on those experiences, I know my parents struggled not necessarily with making money, even though they weren't the highest earners in the world, but more so just the process of having a plan. And I noticed that now in hindsight. And so the conversations, I'm going to say this, and I hope our audience doesn't take this the wrong way. Many people that don't necessarily look like you and I, they have, in general, pretty strong conversations surrounding money. If not conversations, a pretty strong culture of a positive legacy of financial stewardship. All right. So, but many times, folk that look like you and I, we just don't have that positive culture. Many times it can be a negative culture of financial stewardship, whatever that looks like. I won't go into the ins and outs. And yeah, we just didn't have those conversations about money in my home. Any goals or plans or anything like that. Hey, here's how you can do better necessarily. I do remember this in particular, though. I was probably in like 7th grade, and I remember my mom sitting me down and helping me create my first budget. I remember that very, very clearly. That was a very simple budget. Of course, as a kid, I don't have the expense. I'm not paying a mortgage or paying heat bills or buying food or anything like that. But she did help to, write it out. And I remember, and I remember like taping it to my wall. And anytime I made like a little bit of change, maybe from Christmas or something like that, I would kind of divvy out. Now, it wasn't anything consistent or anything like that, but man, it was a beautiful start. And I remember she gave me this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
I never did read it because I did start it, but it was just too, I'm in 7th grade. It was, for me at that time, I wasn't necessarily interested in deep financial topics like that. But just the fact that she gifted me the book, I remember it, and it was very meaningful now as I look back on it. But beyond that, we just didn't necessarily have that culture of talking about it and, hey, here's what you do. Hey, this is what a 401k looks like. This is how you say, we just didn't necessarily have that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the term financial stewardship. And I think some of the term stewardship in itself, we know of it, or we hear it only at one place, which is church, probably.
Yeah.
And then after that, you probably, stewardship, we are taught stewardship is just basically tithe and offering. That's the mindset until later on that's when you learn it's not just about that. But then when you,
at least for you, because everybody,
everybody has a different, at least for me, from what it's, from a religious perspective. So what was it for you? Did your parents have multiple jobs, or was it just a straight one job? Did they have talk about savings at that age where you mentioned financial steward at 7? Did they talk about savings or a plan or anything of that sort?
Yeah, in 7th grade, not like savings vehicles, but the concept of saving, my mom did, kind of draw that up in the budget. In the budget that she helped me to create. So that was the extent of it. Now, very, very meaningful. I'm not overlooking how meaningful that was. But, it was a very basic conversation that, didn't necessarily go beyond that. I do want to address what you talked about, Ken, in terms of, for in the religious world, at least in the Christian world, which is my perspective as well, that when we hear that phrase or that word stewardship, that many times it's talking about tithe, which, for our audience, if we're not familiar with that concept, it's a 10% that we return or give to the church to help support the work of the church and thereby supporting what we call the kingdom of God. But beyond that, we don't really talk much about anything besides the 10% and maybe like an offering beyond that. But when I was like just in my research and thinking and talking about this and even praying about it, I'm like, man, how dare we ask people to give a 10% tithe? And almost at some points, if you're not a Christian, just close your ears on this one. At some points, making people feel bad about not giving a tithe. And we care nothing about or don't even address the other 90% besides that 10%.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so what it shows, and I don't think this is the intent, but what it kind of does show is that, hey, we just care about
The 10.
what you're giving
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
church,
Right.
and whatever you do with the rest of your money, okay,
Yeah,
who cares? But I'm like, no, that can't be. We really do. We really should care about the other 90% and what people are doing with that, and helping people to grow that 90% and do well with that
That's
90%
interesting.
instead of just the 10%.
That's very
Because we
interesting.
care about the whole person, right? We say
Yeah,
that as a
yeah.
church. And so we can't just care about what they give to the church, but we should help people to do well with the rest of their 90%. And that's just been a really high focus for
Yeah.
me, for the church in particular.
Wow. Interesting. Very interesting perspective.
Kenan,
Yeah.
I think we need to close the podcast.
That's it. That's a punchline.
Because right
there.
now, you know, but what I'm hearing, Troy, is there is lack of intentional grooming, training, information. Your mom sat you at the age of 7. Kenan, when is the first time your parents ever sat you down on money issues?
Never.
Never.
Yeah.
When you have 2 children,
Yeah.
have you sat them down to discuss finance?
Pretty much every time, because as kids growing up, all they want is, I'm going to the store. I want this toy. I want this toy. So at least they've been instances where out of necessity, pretty
Out of
much,
necessity.
that I have to, we have to have that conversation, that not because you're in the store you have to get something, not because you have money, they see $1 around, they say, okay, let's spend. So I've had those instances where I have had that conversation with them.
But have you said, today we're going to sit down, and the topic today,
Pretty much, yes.
not because of there
Yeah.
are something in the store
No,
or something
no,
that
no.
you've done that?
We do that, yeah. We try to do that regularly,
Okay.
just to, because and I think we've talked about this with you or somewhere outside of this. So in the podcast, that there's that generational debt that I don't want my kids to have. I don't want to depend on them at 60 for them to
Yes.
give me something.
Yes.
I want to end that generational debt. So I've had to have intentional conversations with them about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah, that's great.
So, Troy, so you grew up in a typical home like any child, father, mother. You go to a private school. Your mom sits you down at the age of 7, tells you a little bit about a budget, and does that. When is the next time in your livelihood as you become a teenager? Once people hit teenage, I want them Jordans. I want to go out with my friends. I want to go to the movies. What was that like in your life? Those teenage phases, age, people are going out, money-wise. How is that shaping and grooming in your teenage and early adulthood life?
Yeah, so one thing, and I failed to say this, and I should say this now because it has a lot to do with your question, that while just the ins and outs of money wasn't necessarily a heavy conversation in my home, working was a heavy conversation, or not just conversation per se, but the expectation
yeah.
of work, and that has a lot to do with financial literacy. I do believe that work is the bedrock of financial literacy, because that's how you make the money in order to do whatever you want to do with the money. So yeah, man, work was always a part of my childhood. I started working consistently sort of at age 13 or so. And I worked all through high school. At some points I swept floors. At some points I cleaned bathrooms. This was at the high school that I attended, the academy. And I worked through college as well. So I was always making money. Now, a lot of the money went towards my school bill, because of course I'm in private school, as I said, and which was fine though. It taught me how to grind and how to work hard. So I really appreciated that aspect. And ended up working during the summer, making some decent money, and I was able to, buy some things that I wanted. But and then it came to a point where, as I was working during the summer, and I think at this point I was going into my college years, so I'm having more independence now, and I'm able to spend a lot more of my own money that I'm now earning, and not asking my parents for permission or anything like that. And I was just spending money on just like crazy stuff, man. Like, back then jerseys were cool, like football jerseys, basketball jerseys, and, baggy jeans and Timberlands and fancy sneakers and this kind of stuff. And a lot of my money went to that. And, now I live with some sort of regret about those moments. I'm like, man, I could have literally opened up some sort of 401k or invested or something like that and been all right now, but that money just went nowhere. And, of course you pick yourself up and you move on, but you still kind of have those regrets a little bit. But yeah, from there in college, man, I got my first credit card.
So,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let's start right there.
So when your first job, did you feel the need, or was it were you pressured to get a job? Well,
no, I wasn't. So I just had nothing else to do. This is during the summer, right before high school, and so yeah, I had nothing else to do, and there was kind of this opportunity to work in a cafeteria, and so I would put the food out, clean the food, clean tables and whatnot. Every now and then I would chop up some onions or something in the kitchen, but yeah, that was more or less my first job. And just kind of fell into my lap. Like I said, I had nothing else to do. I'm like, all right, well, I'm just sitting around, let me just work. And that's where it started.
And you mentioned that there was a talk of savings, but not necessarily the plan.
Yeah, sort of. I guess you could say that. Yeah, it was in the budget, but not like, all right, here's how you open up a savings account. My mom did have a savings account for me, which was, I think you would probably call it a custodial account, where she was on the account. My name was on the account also, but I kind of needed permission to withdraw and that sort of thing, that was powerful. That was a great start. But just understanding like, hey, here's how you're working now. You can open up a 401k or some sort of IRA or whatever. We didn't have that knowledge.
Is it important to have this conversation, and at what age should we start having these conversations?
I would start early with some age-appropriate stuff about saving in general. So let me give you an example for my kids. I don't give them allowance. They earn the money that I give them every week, right? So my kids, it's mostly kitchen work. So my oldest son does, he washes the dishes every day, right? My middle son sweeps the kitchen every day, and my youngest son cleans their kids' table every day, right? So he uses the sponge. My oldest son gets $10 a week. The other two get $5 a week, okay? And if they don't accomplish their task on a particular day, they don't earn their money for that particular day, right? And like when I say, yo, I'm docking your pay, these kids go berserk, man. Oh, no, wait, daddy, I'm gonna do it. I'm like, nah, it's too late, man. I already cleaned it for you. It's too late. So they're learning, hey, I gotta work hard and complete my work in order for, and that's a lifelong lesson to me. That's a lifelong lesson that they just have to learn. And so as they're earning their money, they have 3 categories that they put their money in at the end of the week. The first one is to give or share, I should say share, and they give that to church. That's one of the values that my wife and I want to instill in them, is to share with their faith community. And then they save. I'll come back to that in just a second. And then they spend. So they share 20% of their whatever they make. They spend 50% and they save 30%, right?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, sure.
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes.
Yeah. They share 20% of their income, because that's something that my wife and I have done for years, and that's just us. And then they spend 50% of whatever they make, and then the other 30% they save. So with saving, that save category, that 30%, what they're doing, and we've had these conversations with them, hey, you're saving for college, right? This is what all of their save money goes towards.
Wait, time out. How old is your youngest son?
He's 7.
And he's already saving for college.
Yeah, and he's been doing that for about
and the podcast now.
Yeah.
I know.
He's been doing that for about 2 or 3 years now. Wow. Yeah. So, it's not a whole lot, but it's consistent. It's consistent.
I'm sorry, I want to cut you here. I think like it's not even about how much he saves. Is the idea of even college is already planted in their mind.
That's right.
The idea of furthering my life beyond just here is planted online in their mind. It's just like the education value. It's more than just the financial piece that you're mentioning here. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know, Kenan, what do you hear?
I hear the same thing, but I have a question now.
Yeah.
But just keep your train of thought
Yeah,
where
I
you're
got it.
going. Right. So don't lose it. So I've had conversations with people that they have the argument of entrepreneurship, basically just learning a trade, and school versus school. And I'm saying that intentionally, not and school versus school. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm actually. What were we gonna say?
I was gonna say that's gonna take us to a whole different.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
can answer it very quickly.
Okay,
though.
quickly
I'm
so that we
okay
don't.
with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And I think we should, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm okay with that. You just have to show evidence of a plan, and even if they do end up going to college, you need to show evidence of a plan as well. Yeah, I'm not opposed to my kids learning a trade and being an entrepreneur with that. I think that that's a wonderful plan, and the vehicle that we have their savings set up, and it's called a 529 plan or an ESA, education savings account. Those, as far as I know, and I think some of these are state specific, so you might have to check with your state to make sure. But I think in general, I can say that these can be used for trade school and technical schools as well. So it's not just a 4-year college or just a community college or whatever. You can use these to help pay for those things as
So
well.
again, you're channeling that conversation again to trade school, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, I don't mind my kids doing that.
But there are people that say I don't have to go to school if I can start a business.
Well, yeah, which is fine. But I would say here's the argument that I would make: you need some sort of training, period. Whether it's going to trade school, even entrepreneurship, unless your parents just have it like that, and you can just be part of the family business. But even then, bring something different. Different aspect to the family business or whatever it is, and I think everyone should get trained or educated no matter what career path you choose. Training is going to be there.
Well,
I think we're gonna go back to where we were, but just a quick comment on what you said. I think another conversation we need to have is the concept of education. People think that education, if I go to college, I'm going to just get this degree and get a job.
No.
That's not it. College is where you network. Your network is your net worth. College teaches you discipline. College, in high school, your classes are chosen for you. You know you need to be here. But in college, you start disciplining yourself and making this. These are traits that you don't learn anywhere else. You meet people from different worlds and all that. So we can get into that whole conversation. So, but going back. And
we should, Ezra. At some point, you should devote time.
Yes. We should. No. I'm not going to let you go there. We are talking finance today.
Okay, I just picking your brain, Ezra. Yeah, but
so we're back now. So, when do you get your first credit card? You're in college now.
Yeah,
and how did that go?
I lament this day. And if you guys know anything about me, and if the audience, they'll quickly find out that I do not. I'm not a proponent of debt whatsoever, except for mortgages, because I see how debt has ruined lives, and there's so many arguments surrounding. Well, what about this? What about? I'm like, look, the debt industry is not in it to help anyone. They're in it to gain as much from us as they possibly can. So anyways, that's neither here nor there unless that question comes back to the table. But I was probably 19 or so when I got my first credit card. It was in college. I don't know why my college let this happen, but they allowed credit card recruiters to come on campus, and I traded my soul. I say this pretty lightly. I traded my soul for a Quiznos sandwich. Do they have Quiznos in Minnesota?
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah. So they gave, and it wasn't even a large quiz. It was a small Quiznos sandwich, a coupon that they had given in exchange for signing up for a credit card, and that was the most expensive Quiznos sandwich I ever ate in my life, man. Because people say you can have credit cards responsibly. All right, I'm not even going to deal with that. But you're giving a 19-year-old a credit card with, I think at that point I had like $1,000 credit card limit, with no concept of, or very little concept, I should say, of financial literacy and debt and just how this thing works. And so, yeah, for the debt industry, I understand why they did that. It's the perfect time, you know, to catch people while they're slipping, man, and just like ignorant about everything. And yeah, this is one of the worst decisions I could have made in my life. Just, I was in so much debt, literally from, I got that around 19 or so, and I finally paid it off when this was in, I forgot how, I was in my 20s, something like that. But yeah, that was an unfortunate decision, and there are other bad decisions that my wife and I made along the way.
We're gonna build into that. Let me, Kenan.
Yeah.
When did you have your first credit card?
My first credit card debt was a Capital One credit card for $300, and it was when I was trying to get, we were planning our wedding, so I didn't have money, so I needed and that's the only thing I could qualify for was $300. I ended up paying, I think, $1,200 off of it, and yeah, Israel, yes.
You paid 1,200
out of $300.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so I took a credit card with, I think, 20.
I thought you were smarter than that, Kenan.
First credit card, right? First credit card. I took a credit card,
teasing, yeah.
right? Took a credit card, with, I think it was 29%, and APR, and then they catch you with that 0% for what have 6 months,
For like 3 months, 6 months,
yeah. So I did that. All that was very, and like $300 that I did not have, and I could spend it on a few things for the wedding. Yeah, it was a terrible mistake. Yeah.
Glad you survived.
Oh yeah. What about you, Ezra? Same question.
My first credit card, I can't remember if it was for Best. I think I had several credit cards, but the one that I vividly remember was one for Best Buy. And I just got a Toyota Camry, and I walked into Best Buy, got that credit card, and went back behind the car and put a sound system for $1,200. You know,
no.
so and I had a sound system which eventually was stolen.
Oh, man.
And I was in debt for $1,200.
You still had to pay that back.
Yeah.
The debt wasn't stolen.
Yeah.
Right.
I think these are common stories. If we were to invite our listeners, hey, if you can pause for a second, go to the chat, just say your first experience with your debt, like, you know, credit card, or, you know, that first experience, what it is. I'm sure we're going to have some good stories if we give people a chance to say that. So now, you are right cruising. You get married. Have you changed?
No. And here's the thing about debt. It works until it doesn't work. It works until, sometimes, I should say, sometimes it works until life punches you in the mouth. So my wife and I got married in 2009. And if you remember that time period, that was at the height of the recession.
Yep.
I had just graduated from college the year before. I'm in grad school in Michigan. My wife graduated in 2009, a year after me. So, you know, we waited until she graduated for us to get married. And she's a nurse, right? Graduated with a nursing degree. Moved to Michigan with me. And, you know, everyone told us that, you know, oh, Rochelle, you're about to be a nurse. You're going to find a job anywhere, right? At the height of the recession, she couldn't find a job. Except for, go ahead.
And especially where you went to school, because I know that I went to the same school.
It was, Michigan at that point was ranked dead last, number 50 out of all 50 states in terms of the economy. Because remember, the car industry, GM, the car industry, Michigan's economy is heavily hoisted up by the car industry. And that went kaplunk. And Michigan's economy was just bad. So nurses that were... that had retired were coming back into the workforce because, of course, their 401k, everything is just going down, and they're scared and whatnot. And then nurses that maybe were retirement age or should have retired weren't retiring. So who's going to hire a new grad over, you know, nurses with experience of 30, maybe 40 years or so. So it was just very difficult. Thankfully, she did find like some little things here and there, home care, but we're talking about like $9 an hour, man. It was not a lot. So by the way, when we got married, we had debt from the marriage, from the wedding. And on our honeymoon, we got into even more debt through buying a timeshare. That was by far probably the worst financial decision we had ever made. $10,000 decision, and we never ever used it. Right. So we were paying this thing off, basically just paying off the interest on it and not even touching the principal for years because she wasn't working. I'm in grad school. I'm literally working 3 jobs, reffing flag football games. I'm grading papers. I'm doing everything I can to keep my wife, who, by the way, got pregnant 3 weeks into our marriage. So my pregnant wife, I'm trying to keep her comfortable and all that good stuff, while debt is eating at almost every paycheck that I have. You know what I mean? And
still going to school and
Yes.
expected to do well.
yes.
Wow.
Full-time school. 16, 17 credits in a master's program, which was just, it was nuts, man. It was a bad time of life for us, man. It was bad. This should have been the best time of life. You know what I mean? We're newly married. We're and it was a bad time of life.
You know, Kenan, I'm just listening to Troy. I'm like, bro, what's weird about that? Everybody goes through that. like that is our culture. That is a lot of families. That's a lot of people. It's working 2 jobs, odd shifts, picking these, never home for the family or the kids and whatnot and stuff. But I think at some point we might have gotten comfortable and normalized that.
Yeah.
You know, and that I think to me it's what just eats me. It's like normalizing that. Let's pause here because we're going to start wrapping up here shortly. But ask this question. What do you think are the long-lasting effects of such a life?
Man, you stay in the rat race, almost like a hamster wheel. You ever seen a hamster wheel? The hamster's just running hard now, but not going anywhere, just staying in place. That can summarize a lot of our family's experiences. Unless we choose to get out of the hamster wheel, right, and actually run a race that's worth running, which by the way is not the debt race. You know, we've spent so much time making everyone rich. We've made Bank of America and their CEO rich, Chase, any other bank you want to throw in there, or Sally Mae, we made them rich. Everyone is getting rich except for us.
Time out. I think we're gonna get sued.
I think those are facts. You can Google that.
I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So it takes some intentionality. We can do this. It takes some hard work, takes some intentionality, but on the other side of the struggle is a beautiful life. And by God's grace, my wife and I, we've been able to, we're still not, my wife nor myself have ever made 6 figures in our lives, right? But we're experiencing, after getting out of debt, we're just experiencing a life that's like, all right, man, we're keeping most of the money that we're making. You know, we don't have any payments, you know, except for our mortgage. And to me, this is just a beautiful life that we're able to now set up for our children and those that we care about, our church and our families, so on and so forth. Instead of paying everybody else and making everybody else rich, we're making ourselves rich in the process. And not because we're making so much money in terms of income, but because we're keeping so much money instead of it going elsewhere.
Wow. I just read a quote here that it says bills travel through the mail at twice the speed of checks.
That's good.
You know, and that's
true.
And that's true. And that's exactly what you say. I think it's not a concept of living large, or it's just keeping most of the money that you earn.
Yeah.
That's man.
Now, I think this is some profound stuff, listeners and viewers, that you're just listening here, and I'm sure you're scratching your head and saying, man, how do I get out of this? That's why you can't miss part 2, because we're starting to talk about how do we get out of these. Yeah. But as we get ready to talk part 2, let me ask Troy this to tee us up for the part 2. The lowest moment, the turning moment, to say, gotta get out.
But let's do the lowest moment.
Yeah, that's the same, the turning moment, right?
No, it's the lowest moment. Then he turns from the lower moment.
Okay.
The story, the one that you said.
Don't worry, Troy. This is us.
No problem. That's fine. You guys tell me what you want me to talk about. Yeah, that's fine.
The lowest moment.
Yes.
That sprang you up to your turning point.
Yeah. This was in 2015. My wife was pregnant with my youngest son. We wanted to celebrate our anniversary. Our anniversary is in August. we didn't have much money in the bank, right? And to say that we didn't have much money in the bank, that's probably an understatement. We literally had about $20-something in the bank. Again, we weren't poor in the sense of our income. Even though we never made six figures or anything like that, we weren't poor. We're middle class. We should be fine. But we were living paycheck to paycheck and still in the mindset of debt and that sort of thing. So when you're doing that, it's not, you could still have a good, decent income and still feel or still experience poverty in a sense. So we were there. I had this Visa gift card. It was like a $200 Visa gift card that I got from the internet company for switching to this. So you know how they kind of reel you in with this, whatever. So I'm like, babe, we don't have any money, but hey, let's go out and have a good time. So we went to brunch on a Sunday morning at Cheesecake Factory. Okay. And we went out with this, and I called ahead. I said, hey, do you take Visa gift cards as a form of payment? They said, yeah, no problem. So, yeah, cool. So we went out. Now, $200 is more than enough to cover. So I knew exactly, what we were going to be fine. We went to the restaurant. I asked the front desk, I said, look, I just want to be sure. Do you take Visa gift cards as a form of payment? They said, yeah, no problem. It's fine. So we go, we eat, have a good time, good food, good conversation and whatnot. And comes time to pay. I hand the server this Visa gift card. She goes, runs it, comes back and tells me, hey, I'm not sure what's going on, but this is declined. I'm like, man, this is really strange. So I look at the card, flip it over, read the fine print. They said, you got to call and activate it first before you use it. All right. And the 800 number is right there. So I call immediately. I get an answering service, and they said, well, our call centers are closed on the weekends.
Oh, boy.
No, Ezra, Kenan, this is Sunday morning.
Oh, boy.
They don't open up until another 24 hours, but I have to pay my bill right here and right then. The $20 wasn't going to cover it. So I'm like looking through my wallet, trying to find anything, man. Literally, I had like this old, I think it was like a Lumber Liquidators credit card. And I pulled it out. I gave it to her. She runs it. And of course, I know this. You use Lumber Liquidator credit cards at Lumber Liquidators, not at Cheesecake Factory. I know this, but they say a drowning victim will reach out even for a brick if you throw it to them, right? And I'm just like at my wit's end. So I finally just have the heart. I gear myself up to tell this server, hey, look, this is bad. I know it is, but I just don't have it to pay the meal. I'm not sure what to say. And I thought she was, and she got the manager, by the way, and the manager came over. I thought the manager was going to tell us, hey, you're going to have to wash dishes or something. I just kept imagining my pregnant wife washing dishes next to me. And lo and behold, they didn't tell us to do that. He forgave the meal. Oh, wow. But mind you, I'm very embarrassed. Yeah. And, especially, I'll just go on and say it as a black man, I'm like, man, I'm living out the stereotypes that people might think of us, that we, do this kind of stuff. And so I did go back. I do want to say that we got paid. It was like a funky time of month where we both hadn't gotten paid in like almost a couple of weeks. That's why we were so low. But when we finally got paid, that was like a Sunday. I got paid on a Tuesday, I think. And I did go back and pay for my meal. I gave the server an extra generous tip for her troubles. But that day, people, our audience might be tempted to say, well, that's why you should have credit cards for emergencies. And yeah, a credit card would have helped us to not be embarrassed that day, but a credit card wouldn't have freed us for the rest of our lives. The embarrassment, I believe that, sometimes you have to use every negative thing that happens, you should transform those moments into something positive. And having a credit card for an emergency that day wouldn't have helped us to become financially free. It would have saved us from embarrassment that day, but we determined that day that we would never, ever be embarrassed like that again. And that's where the ball started rolling, and I'll leave the rest of the story for part 2.
My goodness. Man. Hey, listeners, if we add, the only thing that Kenan and I can add is starting to defend credit cards. so rather than mess all these up, we just want to say that this is a much needed conversation, Kenan.
Yeah, it is.
It is a very much needed conversation. We are happy that we are having it. There's some good stuff that's going to come out of this as we wind up. Troy is not only here passionately speaking about this, he holds classes, financial literacy classes. And can you just in 30 seconds just give us a brief of that, and then we'll build on it next time.
Yeah, so the name of the course is The Blueprint, where you build your financial house from the ground up. So we start with the foundation, we build 4 walls. At some points we were going to demolish bad financial habits as well as you build on good financial habits. But then we have a ceiling and floor, and we take stairs to the next level, and we have a roof that protects our assets. And all of these are all these elements of the house are financial literacy components that make sense and that correspond to the financial house. And so you can find this on the website troylevy.com, and my name should be in the show notes, I think. So that's TROYS as in Solomon, that's my middle name, Levy, Levy. So troyslevy.com. Click on the Blueprint course and you can purchase it right then and right there.
Awesome. We give you resources as usual. That has been our time here at Amazing Truth podcast, and we are looking forward to part 2. Please don't plan to miss. That has been our time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Amazing Truth Podcast. We hope you were blessed as you listened. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. God bless you, and see you on the next one.